everyone, and thanks for tuning in to our webinar on user-centered design. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about why user-centered design should top your technology wish list for 2020. We are going to focus a little bit more on incentives and recognition technology, as that's what we sell. But I'm excited to be joined by two One10 experts, Tim Armato, who is our user experience architect here at One10, as well as Mark Hutchison, who is our technology product manager for Performex. My name is Samantha Decker. I'm the marketing director here at One10. And without further ado, let's get started. So my first question is going to be to Tim. Tim has a lot of knowledge around user-centered design. It's something he's been working with for a long time. So the question is just frankly, what is user-centered design and what is the value in it, especially when it comes to incentives and recognition?
Hi, thank you. Again, my name is Tim Armato, and I'm on the user experience team here at One10. And of all the things I'm involved with in our design process, really, at the end of the day, what it all boils down to is that it's my job to make sure we're designing things so you don't hate using them. Now that's a simple statement, but simplicity is usually the outcome of a lot of complex effort. So how do we get there? Let's look at that a little bit. One of the biggest parts of how we achieve that is by taking an approach called user-centered design. The main idea of this is that you need to keep the user's needs at the center of the design process. Now I know you're saying, well, wait, that sounds obvious. But it turns out that it's really easy for us to make assumptions about our users. We unconsciously project a lot of ourselves into their shoes. So it takes an effort to make sure you really understand the real needs, capabilities, and frankly, sometimes the limitations of your product's end users. Now, a lot can get in the way of that. So let's start by looking at some of those problems. What can go wrong when you don't understand your users? An often neglected part of understanding the user's experience is looking at the physical environment where they actually encounter the designs. Take, for example, this display of flight arrivals at the airport. Wait a second, what's going on down there on the counter? Seems that in a world of touch screens and scroll wheels, no one was expecting buttons, especially buttons that don't look like any traditional piece of computer hardware. These are more likely borrowed from the elevator at the end of the hall. Another example is lots of things happen. We see lots of examples around doors and physical interactions with accessing space. So, I mean, sure, sometimes the design can get driven by other interests that aren't the users. Requirements, for example, yeah, this is a door and it has a lock and a handle, and that sounds like it should do it, right? It's probably meets somebody's list of requirements, but it's not the users. It can be hard and expensive to fix bad user experience after the fact. For example, right, we could try and come up with a solution. We could maybe give people 2 pairs of pliers and a training document that shows them how to bend the key to still fit it into the lock behind the handle, but that's not really practical. Another door, does it have a ramp? Yep, well, all right, then it meets the technical requirements, doesn't it? Well, this obviously isn't usable. In the absence of user-centered design, you can really risk building products that, though they implement your business requirements, don't really do it in a way that help your users get their work done.
Great, thank you, Tim. That gives us a little bit of background about user-centered design and what it is. Now, the next question becomes, how do we ensure the way we design appeals to a variety of needs and user requirements? As we know, with incentives and recognition technology, there are so many different types of participants and managers and just various roles within the technology, and each of those requires slightly different copy and content given to them.
Right, good question. And so I think to help answer that, we could start by taking a closer look at the user-centered design process itself. User-centered design is a structured process, and the key is that it involves real users throughout. You begin by gathering data in a research phase. That data feeds the design phase. The designs need to be evaluated and tested, and then finally you can deploy these designs and release them into the world. These are examples of what we call user personas. It's an example of one kind of output from that research phase of user-centered design. A user persona is an abstraction that's representative of a class of users. Here we have Tom, Susan, and Catherine, who are fictitious characters, but they're constructed from real findings, typically surveys and interviews. In our case, we developed these particular personas after a several-week-long process of getting in touch and interviewing various end users through our clients. Now, this is different than market research in that the goal here is to develop empathy for individuals and understand the needs of specific people. User-centered design helps reveal really kind of the human perspective of your business requirements. These personas help you identify the concrete needs that are most important to different types of users and their contexts. You know, Catherine, for example, is an HR buyer. The Susan Baker persona, she's an account manager. Tom is a sales representative. So this user-centered design helps us identify various types of users and how their needs differ, and the different contexts. And then those personas help the product team really stay focused on designing to those different needs. After research, then you eventually need to start designing. And it's critical that you evaluate those designs along the way. This is very much akin to the scientific method, where you develop a hypothesis based on observational data and test that hypothesis to see if it holds up. And so by putting our preliminary designs in front of actual users, you can evaluate whether you're on track to meeting the needs that were identified in that research phase. At this point, you often see paper prototypes and other types of low fidelity mock-ups. These are techniques that allow designers to learn from their mistakes early, while the mistakes aren't too expensive to make. And it allows us to quickly adjust and refine the designs based on that feedback we get. One thing in particular that we learned while testing our design models is that we didn't need to be so concerned about how much the system could do. By observing what people were doing with the system, we were actually able to concentrate on designing the experiences that support just the most common activities. So then you get to the point of deploying your feature. You release it into the wild, but it's important that it doesn't end there. User-centered design is a cyclical process. It feeds back on itself because business requirements and users' needs change over time, and this makes good user experience a moving target. So it takes a sustained effort to make sure you're providing a product that continues to help your users achieve their goals, and that a good user experience doesn't get left behind as the product matures or as your business needs change over time.
Great. Loving this. I hope you all are too. So kind of the third piece, how do we ensure participants can get the right information at the right time? Part of our methodology is inform, engage, and reward. And so really the inform piece, how do we make sure that participants are seeing the right thing at the right time?
Of course, right, that's critical. And user-centered design, of course, gives us the tools to make sure we're doing that. And it goes back largely to that, the research and discovery, and making sure that we identify what various users need in different contexts so that we can understand what information we need to provide and to keep them informed and engaged. Because as we know, business doesn't always happen in an office, especially given the sort of new flexibility of today's work landscape. Our user-centered design revealed opportunities for how we could help participants stay informed and engaged in a wider variety of environments. To that end, we discovered that people weren't interested in having access to everything that they could do on every device. So, for example, our mobile user experience is tailored to support the tasks that people tend to do when their work happens away from a desk. And it's also important to consider that when you're designing the mobile version of a service, this is way more complicated than just fitting everything onto a smaller screen, because when people use mobile devices, they tend to interact for much shorter periods of time. They're surrounded by more distractions, and they don't have access to all the business resources and the information that they would have at their desk. So things like very complicated input forms or big spreadsheety sales reports, for example, these technically could be redesigned and reformatted to fit on small screens, but usually they really don't belong there. When something's designed mobile first, certain features are usually left out of the mobile site so that the user's experience can remain really focused on those on-the-go tasks. So to kind of wrap this all up, let's kind of take a quick recap of the user-centered design process: research, design, evaluate, and deploy. And in the middle of all of this, of course, are the user's needs centered in the design process. It's critical to get feedback throughout the design process and involve users at several different opportunities along the way, which include, among other things, prototyping and testing those new designs and evaluating the designs before they're built. And then finally, actually, to keep it going. It's, again, a cyclical process, and even once you release some features and the product, you need to monitor it and do more research and measure its performance and make sure that it's still serving the needs of those users in the long run.
Excellent. So now we have the background and the basis of user-centered design. So Mark is going to take it from here and talk a little bit more about our proprietary technology, Performex. As I mentioned, it's an incentives and recognition technology. And Mark, I'll hit it over to you here.
Great. Thanks, Sammy. So hello, my name is Mark. I'm a product manager here at One10, specifically for the Performex platform. I'm going to talk about our incentives and recognition platform. This is where we put into action all of the things that Tim's already discussed, and he is a team member for that effort. The guiding principles for our technology are to inform, engage, reward, and evaluate. And with those in mind, we believe our solutions and then our client strategies will be successful. A continuing trend that we see is consolidation overall. So the consolidation of programs, technologies, data, etc. So the slide that I'm showing is a vision of where the Performex platform sits in a sample ecosystem. And I can guide you with a quick overview. So if you look on the left-hand side, it's showing the process of taking multiple data elements from varied sources and funneling them into a single source of truth. And then that forms the basis for everything that happens systematically. We take all the separated programs, initiatives, we bring them together. The single platform creates a larger umbrella program that then allows for the focusing on the goals and all the promotions that run underneath it. On the right-hand side, we're kind of showing how each group of users is seeing what is directly pertinent to them. So it's based on their roles and permissions. And that includes reporting as well, which it kind of gets back to the evaluate portion of our guiding principles. And at One10, we have proven experience in this process within our platform solution. So next, a quick high-level overview of Performex. A lot of the things that Tim's already discussed. It can be branded. We believe it's easy to use, has a mobile-first UI. We have graphical and tabular reporting. It's flexible, and it's already met a number of Fortune 500 security compliance measures. And we believe that helps us to immediately go into your ecosystem and infrastructure and integrate to some of your solutions that exist already. Would love to give a demo of the platform to you, so please reach out, and I think Sammy will provide that contact information. And with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Sammy.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, just to wrap up today, everyone, thank you so much for taking a listen and learning a little bit more about user-centered design and why it is important for incentives and recognition in particular. As Mark alluded to, we have our email address, info@one10marketing.com, as well as our website and all of the social media. So follow us on everything. Thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.